Change sometimes comes slowly, in silence, without official announcements, without loud press conferences. But those who follow closely can already sense it in the air. When one of the biggest names in the position may be leaving and a seasoned veteran emerges as an emergency solution, it's because the clock is ticking. The Miami Dolphins are about to turn another important page. Comment, like, and subscribe. Stephon Gilmore. This could be the name that soon appears in South Beach. With Jalen Ramsey on the verge of being traded and Miami still actively seeking a business partner, the need is clear. The Dolphins will need 2 new starters in the secondary. And if the draft didn't bring a game-changing solution, Jason Marshall Jr. from Florida was only picked in the 5th round. The answer may lie in the veteran market. Gilmore, a former Defensive Player of the Year who started 16 games with the Vikings in 2024, is available. And more than that, he fits perfectly into Miami's defensive system. According to Pro Football Network, the Dolphins were the 4th team to use Cover 2 coverage the most in the NFL last year, a system where Gilmore has already played effectively. Familiarity with the scheme makes for immediate adaptation. The financial context only reinforces this possibility. If Ramsey's contract is indeed moved, with its $24 million annual value, Miami will need to fill the gap while spending little. And Gilmore, at 35 years old, is no longer seeking big contracts. He signed with Minnesota only last August, skipping most of training camp. The ideal scenario for a team like Miami. An experienced, disciplined player who can step right into the system and deliver consistency from the first snap. And with the Dolphins' defense requiring experience in the secondary, especially in schemes with 2 deep safeties, the fit is not just technical, it's strategic. And now it's time to say the obvious that no one wants to face. Jalen Ramsey's cycle in Miami is nearing its end. And despite all the frustration this may generate, the NFL is driven by timing and pragmatism. Ramsey is still elite when healthy. But between injuries, market value, and cap cost, the numbers just don't add up. Gilmore isn't the future of the franchise, but he's the kind of present that keeps things together. While Jason Marshall Jr. develops, while the front office plans for 2026, Gilmore can keep the structure functioning. It reminds me of what the Patriots did with Darrelle Revis in 2014, a bridge between generations that kept the system at the highest level. And if you still have doubts, answer this. Who else is available with this background, for this price, and with this tactical familiarity? The answer is clear. Gilmore may not be the perennial hero, but he's the veteran who can hold things down. There are players who don't need to rush. They wait. They wait for the right team, the right system, the right opportunity. And when it appears, they step onto the field and show why they're still in the game. This is precisely the moment for a veteran who, even at 35, can still solve a lot. And the Ravens, with a transitioning secondary, know this. Stephon Gilmore could be the name that rounds out Zach Orr's defense. With 5 Pro Bowls on his resume and the 2019 Defensive Player of the Year award still shining in his history, the veteran played all 16 games last season as a starter for the Vikings and delivered efficiency, 7.1 yards allowed per target. Not bad for someone who was already hearing whispers of decline. And now, with the Baltimore Ravens reshaping their secondary, Brandon Stevens out, Chidobe Awuzie in, and rookie Malachi Starks debuting alongside Kyle Hamilton, Gilmore emerges as the obvious solution, not to lead the defense, but to stabilize it. He knows man-to-man coverage like few others, and Baltimore used this scheme at the 9th highest rate in the league in 2024. The fit is clear, the logic is evident, and the context only reinforces the need. The Ravens have lost depth in the secondary. Jalen Armour-Davis and TJ Tampa are still question marks. And in a defense that pressures, plays physically, and prides itself on its aggressive DNA, you can't head into September with doubts on the edges. Gilmore doesn't need to be all-pro again. He just needs to be solid, present, intelligent. And that he still is, perhaps more than ever. The market value is low, and the cost-benefit is incredibly high. What's more, he already knows he will choose carefully. He signed with Minnesota last August. He will repeat the script in 2025. Wait, choose, and deliver. And now, I speak as an analyst and observer. This potential arrival would be typical of the Ravens. Smart, calculated, without desperation. Zach Orr is taking over the defense with a strong foundation, but he needs to ensure that the transition doesn't break the system. Gilmore's presence alongside Hamilton and Starks would create a solid structure, ready to withstand playoff shootouts. And even if he only plays 60% of the snaps, the impact would be disproportionate. It reminds me of what the Broncos did with Champ Bailey in the final years, or even the Eagles with Asante Samuel at the end of his career. Players who held the fort while the next talent was developed. And for me, this is the move Baltimore needs. Gilmore isn't the future, but he is the present. He's the veteran who holds things together when the rookie makes a mistake. He's the silent mentor who faces Davante Adams without blinking. If the goal is to compete in the AFC at the highest level, you can't rely solely on young talent. And Gilmore, at 35, is still better than many starters in the league. There are times when we need to separate opinion from provocation, because one thing is to analyze the scenario, watch tape, interpret context. Another is to throw a prediction into the air just to make noise. And when it comes from an anonymous executive, it signals that the bomb wasn't dropped to inform. It was dropped to see who reacts. Well then, here, we react with argument, with tactical reading, and above all, with common sense. J.J. McCarthy is the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Period. The 22-year-old rookie, recovered from the meniscus injury he suffered last August, arrives ready, with the locker room behind him and with the right coach at the helm. Kevin O'Connell has already shown he knows how to mold a young QB. And McCarthy, with his mobility, accuracy on the move, and clean decision-making, fits like a glove in the system. So, when an anonymous NFL executive fires off that McCarthy will get hurt and Sam Howell will become the new Sam Darnold, the only possible response is, calm down. Howell was a starter in Washington, yes. He showed a strong arm, yes. But he also led the league in interceptions and sacks taken. Comparing his trajectory to Darnold's, who, even with inconsistencies, was the third overall pick, is forcing a narrative. And what's most concerning is the timing. The Vikings finally have stability in the offensive command, reinforce the attack around their QB, and are betting on a conscious transition process. The arrival of Howell via trade with the Seahawks was strategic. A QB2 with experience, capable of holding the fort if necessary. But the project is McCarthy. The plan is McCarthy. And more importantly, the conviction is McCarthy. The locker room has already bought into the idea. O'Connell has too. And there are no indications that the injury from 2023 will leave any lasting effects. On the contrary, off-season workouts show an agile, accurate player with a starting quarterback's demeanor. The scenario in Minnesota is no longer one of speculation. It's one of affirmation. And now I speak as someone who follows this team closely. It's not the time to feed smokescreens. The Vikings are not testing options. They are betting on a specific talent, on a long-term project. This narrative that Howell could steal the spot only serves to fill space. Howell, at most, is emergency insurance, no more. And if something happens to McCarthy, because injuries are part of the league, the structure needs to be ready to sustain it. But the ceiling of this team, the future of this offense, rests in the hands of J.J. McCarthy. That's who the Vikings are investing in, and that's who the season will revolve around. Now I ask, Vikings fans, do you believe in this project or do you still have doubts? Comment, like, and subscribe.